can I just interrupt you and say that I can right now hear the screeching of about 4,000 nerds saying, if you're drinking root beer, you should be watching Deep Space Nine, obviously. Star Trek Enterprise was an awesome blast from the past.
Star Trek Enterprise had the coolest Star Trek theme song.
Star Trek Enterprise was the best Star Trek.
Star Trek Enterprise shares its name with my favorite ship from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Fallingtower's Watch the First podcast, the podcast in which we watch the first episode of a series, and then we talk about it. By the way, we're celebrating 20 years of Falling Tower. Can you believe it? We started Falling Tower when we were 15 months technically. We are here with Stephanie K. and Bridget Fitzgerald. Always here, Mr. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg, just healing up from what'd you do to your wrist?
Not always. I was in a car accident. I just got out of a wrist cast, and they put me in this splint. So it's good to be back.
Which leads me back to what I was saying. Just healing up from his wrist and stuff injuries. Today we are reviewing, by the way, my name is Ryan T. Husk. We are reviewing Star Trek Enterprise, which was later called Enterprise, and then I think might have gone back to Star Trek Enterprise at some point. Stephanie would know better than we would. Broken Bow Part 1, just the first episode, and we're going to talk about it right now. Michael, do you want to tell us what this was about?
I think so. So this show is set in the mid-22nd century, over 100 years before James T. Kirk helmed the famous vessel. This installment of the Star Trek franchise is set on the Enterprise NX-01, the first Earth starship capable of Warp 5, and explores the history of the interplanetary upheaval that eventually leads to the formation of the Federation. In this episode, the Enterprise crew sets on a maiden voyage with a mission to return a wounded Klingon to his people.
I'm glad it said eventually, because that was one of my qualms with Enterprise, was it was very eventually. It wasn't eventually this episode or even this season. So we're
only talking about the first episode, though, right?
That's
here,
right.
That's right. Ryan.
So the way we start off this conversation is we talk about what did you expect and what did you get. So, Michael, before you watched this episode, what did you expect?
The very first time or just this time?
Just right now, I guess.
So, okay, I'll be honest. I haven't seen all of Enterprise. When I was making my way through all the Star Treks sequentially. I was on Voyager when I met my wife and got married, and she was not into Star Trek. Oh. But we made a pact to watch some Star Trek. But I had to give up something, so I had to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then she watched Star Trek Next Generation, and then she wanted to watch Angel, and I was like, well, we got Deep Space Nine, and so that's where we're at right now. We're making our way through Deep Space Nine. So actually, I have seen a handful of episodes, and I have seen the pilot in the past. But I guess when I was watching it this time, I expected to have a Star Trek show that I was really gonna like. Is what I expected.
Stephanie, before you watched this episode for the 15th time,
at least,
what did you expect?
I expected pretty much what I got, which was an explanation. And the reason that I've always liked Enterprise is because it's so raw, and you get to see kind of the beginnings. Like, you get to see our first forays into space. You get to see the beginnings of our relationship with the Vulcans, which is something, it's one of the reasons I've always enjoyed the show, is because when you compare it to TOS and everything was always clean and proper and seemed very much in place, to see how it all started and how raw and stumbling we were. it was pretty interesting, and I've always liked to see that evolution of how we got to be how they got to be the Federation.
Right. What about you, Bridget?
Okay, guys.
All right, get ready.
Let's go back. Okay, I've watched all episodes of Next Generation. I love Next Generation. I haven't watched that much of the original series. I have watched some Voyager. I watched all of Picard. I watched some Deep Space Nine. That's my understanding. Here's where I thought, yeah. So I didn't know, like I didn't bother to Google. I was like, this is the episode. We're going to go into this blind. I didn't realize it was before everything else. I was kind of confused because I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? What are we talking about? I was like, how do you know what a Vulcan is, but you have no idea what a Klingon is? Guys, get on the same page. Klingon, whatever that they called them in this episode. But I was just like, what? So that was an interesting revelation for me, was I didn't realize that was going to be the times that, future, but not as far future as the future we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my biggest surprise for me. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I expected, because since we're giving a little bit of background, I realized that I don't think I've watched Enterprise since its inception, since 2005.
Wow.
So, but look, I liked it a lot. I remember liking it a lot. I remember loving the characters, and I had a lot of thoughts and opinions that we can talk about later. So what I expected, I was actually really excited to watch it. What I expected was to kind of get reintroduced to some old friends, and beyond that, I just thought I was going to enjoy myself. It was going to be a fun time. And what do you know? It did feel like I was being introduced to new friends. That's what we got. And I liked it a lot. And I was very happy to see these characters that I loved so much. And a couple other things that we'll talk about later. But what did you get, Michael?
So what I got was it was a good show. I wouldn't say that that the first episode blew me away. I guess the part one of the first episode, I wouldn't say it blew me away. I was a little bit taken aback and a little bit thrown off by the fact that the Federation, I guess it's not really the Federation,
Not yet.
that Starfleet was just acting so American. Right? It's just like they're just like, hey, Vulcans, stop taking away our freedoms. Like,
let's eat some steak.
Right, yeah. There's eating huge steaks right in front of the Vulcan, knowing that she's a vegetarian. It's like, I just felt like the whole Starfleet, they just seemed a little bit too American, and that doesn't really jive with me, because they were even talking about how world peace and all like that. So wouldn't it be more of a world culture than just American culture?
Yeah,
that's my main gripe.
Stephanie, what did you get?
Well, watching it this time, like the 15th or 16th time, I love the humor, the snarky bits of humor, which, considering that it's Rick Brennan and Brandon Braga, who it's the same humor that carries over from First Contact. That's what you get. You kind of get that integration with getting James Cromwell to play Zefram Cochrane one more time. So it does really kind of feel like the sequel to First Contact, which
totally.
And yeah, and I love that about it. And like I said, I like the use of humor, and
you scratch the paint.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a scene in part 2 that kind of refers back to the scratch the paint, like a look between Tucker and Archer in another scene where it kind of refers back to that. So yeah, that's what I liked. I liked the humor, and I liked the fact that it felt like a continuation of the movie.
By the way, Zefram Cochrane, James Cromwell, was not credited on IMDb. Really strange.
Somebody needs to go update his page.
Yeah.
By the way, for those that don't know, we're talking about the guy right behind Ryan's head.
You have to eat ducks
on the view screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that dude. He's a good friend. well, I consider him a good friend. He's probably just like, who are you? Oh, yeah, cool. Sure, you want a picture or what? What about you, Bridget? What did you get?
What did I get?
Yeah, well, this is what you expected, what you said. And what did you get?
I mean, I got a glimpse into a past. I mean, I have a lot of independent thoughts. I didn't have an over-encompassing thing. I accidentally watched parts 1 and 2, as I discussed before we got on this call. So I have 2 thoughts. Like, 1 I loved, 2 I did not like. So I enjoyed a lot of things about episode 1. A lot of things about the pilot I enjoyed.
Please continue.
Yeah, any specifics?
To be specific, something that I enjoyed, well, that scratch the paint thing that Stephanie K talked about a second ago, I enjoyed too. Although in my version of it, I was like, great, so there's bad drivers in the future as well. I was like, wonderful. So I'm like, come on, I'm escaping LA right now. I don't need to see this.
He's an engineer, not a shuttle pilot.
It was also very cute that they were all scared to be beamed anywhere. I mean, it was fun. There were fun parts.
I was waiting for some more paint scratches when they were leaving dry dock and.
Yeah, I
what did you get, Ryan? That's the real question.
Well, I got to see my old buddies that I felt like I hadn't seen in a long time, and I did notice more humor. It definitely brought me back to when they first announced that there was going to be a new Star Trek series, and they announced when it was going to take place. And when they said Scott Bakula was going to take over, I got really happy because I remember old school Star Trek, the original series is supposed to be super cheesy. It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of light, and when they said that Scott Bakula was going to be the captain, I was like, perfect, because I watched him in Quantum Leap. I said, he's got that perfect cheese factor, where he can be silly, he can kind of be like, oh boy, and watching the first episode, I was reminded of that and how happy I was that not only did he fit that mold, but Trip is really great. He's very American, right? As Mike says, he definitely brings that American feel. And so
I can understand him being American. I mean, he's like he kind of represents the good old American boy, but
right.
like even like the admirals and everybody in Starfleet Command was all kind of acting kind of like, you guys aren't telling us everything. You guys need to be more forthcoming.
Yeah, right. And then the Vulcans were super stuffy and kind of like, they were definitely ruder than we remember them in other iterations.
They were definitely ruder, and I could see that kind of like rubbing like the Starfleet the wrong way. But then, I mean, my point is just like that they just, especially like you pointed out with the big old stakes and stuff like that. It's like that kind of seemed unnecessary in a future where it's a world government. So,
well, T'Pol agrees with you, and I agree with her.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that goes back to just the rawness. I mean, this is all new to humans dealing with a new species, an alien species. Not only that, but the Vulcans, they felt like the Vulcans were holding them back. The Vulcans definitely had a superiority complex the entire time.
Yeah,
they're like,
sure.
It's like, yes, we landed and we made first contact with you because the whole Zefram Cochrane warp drive. But now that we're here, we're like, oh, you people developed warp drive? It came off as, we don't even understand how you managed to do that.
You still eat meat? Ugh.
Exactly. And I can understand the frustration. Don't scratch the paint. But I could definitely understand where they were coming from, dealing with the Vulcans and feeling like, they were here to cooperate, but they weren't cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like they had like this weird parent-child relationship with the Vulcans and the humans, which also kind of mirrored what was going on in flashbacks with Scott Bakula and his father. So I thought that was very interesting how they chose to make that kind of tension of like testing boundaries. What is my independence? What am I, strong enough to do on my own?
Yeah, I mean, from the get, when a very young Jonathan Archer called him Ambassador Pointy, I mean, you knew right away that things were not great with the Vulcans, like where everybody's used to, thanks to TOS. You're just like, wait, we don't like the Vulcans? Where did that come from? So and what I loved through the 4 seasons that Enterprise was on the air was the evolution of the relationship. They didn't leave you hanging. You got to see how we got to the point where we got in TOS.
Although, can I add in, I really appreciate her eyebrows in this season. Like the Vulcan eyebrows on the Vulcan on their ship was much more human, much more nice. I watch with fashion vision sometimes, so that
I noticed that too. Though I was kind of looking for that too. I was like, did they give her those sharp pointed Spock eyebrows?
Weird,
it was a little bit. It was a little bit cut here.
I didn't notice it. I just remember looking at her wig because I also remember this flashing back 19 years to when they were talking about how the show was about to start, and Jolene Blaylock was talking about her wig, and she said that they spent time changing the wig because first they gave her one and she didn't like it or they didn't like it, and I remember her saying, but now this one is perfect. And I remember just looking at this just now and going, it doesn't, I don't know why you call that perfect. It looks kind of weird, but I was looking at her head. You guys were looking at her eyebrows. I missed out.
I was watching her smile. Did you notice she actually kind of every now and then?
Yeah,
and I'm going, that's a little emotional. Archer's right. You guys have been spending too much time on Earth.
And they sounded agitated too. Yeah.
Yeah. Although it could have been more of a little superiority smirk too, like.
Huh. Yeah, that's true too. I definitely got that vibe from her. Little,
I'll tell you what I was excited about too, upon watching it again for the first time, kind of, was how many characters they introduced so quickly. Usually it takes a while for them to introduce everybody. Not only did they introduce the 7 main characters in the first 12 minutes, but they also introduced Admiral Forrest. They also introduced our buddy Ambassador Saval, Gary Graham, who's also going to be on Virtual Trek Con.
Yay!
So I was like, oh yeah, I forgot he's in this first episode, and so is Forrest. It was like everybody just pops in at the very beginning. I thought that was really cool, and it's like seeing your old buddies all over again. I do feel like, and this is a good question to go around the table here, that I've always felt that Enterprise had the characters that were the most underutilized. Especially for me, it's Travis and Hoshi. I felt like, long term, but we're only talking about this one episode here. Mike's getting ready to frown at me so hard. But, overall, I guess just talking on this first episode, were you happy with how they introduced and how they utilized the characters?
I guess I'll answer first because you usually go to me first anyway and put me in the hot seat.
What do you think, Bridget? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
I think they were all utilized well. I mean, you had a little relationship between Trip and Mayweather that was kind of cute, and then there was Hoshi had her whole thing as the communications officer, and she had her communicating with the Klingons and not just the one Klingon that they had on their ship, who was Tiny Lester. Debo from
so glad you brought that up. So glad you brought that up. Oh, is this your bike? I didn't know you wanted it back, homie. That's a line.
Ryan
from
and
Friday.
I are both big fans of the movie Friday. And so that was good to see. I was at first I was like, wait a minute, he looks familiar, and then I remember seeing Tiny Lester in the credits, and I was like, oh yeah, that's him. But okay, so back to the characters. Phlox got a great introduction. He was probably my favorite character overall in this first episode. At
really?
Least. Yeah. He was just. What was the one line he had?
Optimism, Captain.
Yeah, that was so funny and so cute. And then who else? Who am I missing? Yeah, Jolene T'Pol Blaylock, and so she obviously had a big part. Even what's Dominic Keating? I forget his character's name.
Lieutenant Reed.
Yeah, Reed. He had plenty of lines, and I think they did a good job of utilizing everybody, like you said, in this first episode. I mean, I'm just talking about the main cast, but yeah, even Saval and Vance Armstrong, whatever his name is. Huh? Yeah.
Vaughn
Armstrong, right? Yeah. Like everybody had.
No, you're right.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Everybody
it's
had.
Like we're sitting with Wikipedia herself.
Yeah. I can just say, Stephanie, help me out here. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I think they did a great job of and really it was organic too. It wasn't forced either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think, Stephanie? Did they introduce everybody and utilize them properly to your liking in this viewing?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, spoilers, whatever, but going forward, I know a lot of people feel like Hoshi and Mayweather were underutilized for the rest of the series, but in this intro, I think everybody was pretty equal. I think they set up the little triangle that was going to be, the T'Pol, Captain Archer, Trip as the core. They set that up right from the get. Yeah. With that first dinner and everything, and you're kind of like, oh, these are going to be the big three of the series, just like every other series had their big three. I thought, with Mayweather, with making sure everybody understood that, the whole boomer thing, kind of, they introduced that pretty quickly, that he was actually raised in space, to kind of bring home the whole Warp 5 is a big deal because it takes months. I mean, he was talking about how it took him like 3 grades of school to get from point A to point B. So I thought Mayweather was introduced well. I love the fact that they had Hoshi as the linguist because they didn't have the universal translator. She was the universal translator. And I thought that they did a really good job with her, especially when she was trying to actually, for the first time, talk to a Klingon.
Well, they had the universal translator, but I guess it wasn't like set up for all these different languages. I guess
had
a hard time
or something.
Assimilating new languages.
Right. So they actually had to have a person that could do what Hoshi could do.
Right. Yeah.
And I always thought that was great. As far as Lieutenant Reed, which, by the way, I would be remiss as the #1 Enterprise fan not to mention today also that we're recording this happens to be Dominic Keating's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Dominic Keating. By the time you hear this, you'll be like, it was 2 weeks ago, damn it.
But we are recording it on his birthday, so yes.
That's cool.
So anyway,
you mean we don't record these the same day that they go out?
Damn, did I spoil
no, you
something?
Didn't. No, it's fine.
We're like the Suliban. We just kind of flip in and out of things.
Yeah, there you go. I think Reed set up. I don't think, as an armory officer, you don't get quite the feel for what he's supposed to do. And I felt kind of that way as I've been rewatching the series, because trust me, I've been rewatching the entire series. Sometimes I feel like, he's tactical, he's armory. And I just feel like sometimes the captain, like Archer, just takes over with that kind of thing. Like when they were on the planet trying to find out what happened with Klang. And I just felt like, he is your guy. He's supposed to be like on the front lines protecting everybody. And it was Archer that was out there saving T'Pol, and it was Archer that got shot in the leg. And then all of a sudden.
Right. Well, this was hearkening back to the original series. I remember, the writers are mentioning something to where, with the original series, there was that triumvirate of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They definitely wanted those 3, and they wanted to kind of recreate that. But also back then, as we know in later series, the captain stays on the ship and the first officer goes off with Worf or whatever and saves the day. But back then, with the original series, Kirk was the hero going off to save the day.
Kirk always went everywhere, yeah.
Right. So they were trying to recreate that with Archer being kind of like the Kirk of the time.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about the series in general, is you get to kind of see where all of these protocols come in. Mm-hmm. Like why in later series did they decide to do this? I mean, and again, like the Prime Directive, you actually kind of get a feel for why the Prime Directive was brought about. And I've said this before, and if you sit down and watch the series, you will agree probably that Trip is probably the main reason they invented the Prime Directive. And that kind of starts with this, where they're on, and I can't believe I can't remember the name of the planet. And I just watched the episode
Rigel
today.
10.
Thank you. When they were on Rigel. See, look at that. We're helping each other. when they were on Rigel, and Trip kept trying to interfere with what was going on with other species, and T'Pol had to pull him back. That's a lot of foreshadowing for the rest of the series, that Trip tends to put his foot in where it does not belong.
Right. Better than other things, though, I guess. And I did like what you said, that it did feel like a sequel to First Contact. I think that's spot on, because it did feel like that. Bridget, what do you think about, how do you feel about like the characters getting introduced and how they were utilized? Did you fall in love with some? Did you not get enough of others?
Well, I thought it was fun how they picked Floyd Mayweather, I guess, as an inspiration for Mayweather, who cares about fighting.
Maybe.
He really cares that they can defend themselves. Boxer Floyd Mayweather, I hope, was an inspiration. I also really loved that dynamic between the Vulcan, I don't know her name, and the captain. I'm sorry? T'Pol and Trip. Captain Archer? No, Archer.
Yeah. Yep.
At the beginning. I thought I was in the beginning of a Star Trek rom-com, because they really hated each other.
Yeah.
So I was very excited about what was happening there. Also, I thought that they built up that we don't like her in a very smart way, because she hated his dog. Did you hear that? I was like, ooh, that's how you set up a bad guy. Because I'm like, not liking a dog, that's like an instant no-no for me. I mean, like, that's a whole John Wick in space thing going on there.
Yeah. What did she say? I've been taught to tolerate uncomfortable,
offensive odors or something.
Situations. In other words, I was her saying, I'm tolerating this offensive situation of being with you guys. And then she's going to say something else later on. The dog starts humping her leg, and she's like, ugh. It's just like she's just oozing with discontent, and we love it.
So upset about a very cute dog. Look at that.
You need to keep watching. You just need to keep watching the series.
Yeah. After this, though.
I mean,
not now.
I enjoy more puppies. I'm very happy about that. I also thought it was neat that they gave female Vulcans super smelling. They're pregnant women, I guess. I don't know.
Thinking it's like, wait a minute, pregnant women, Vulcan females. Yeah, that's exactly where my brain went to.
They're very logical. Doesn't check out with pregnant women, but yes, the other part, super smells, does.
Yeah. Who do you guys think had the best introduction out of all the characters? Like their first scene, or their first line, or their first big moment. Who had the best introduction? Stephanie.
Ooh, I think I liked Phlox's introduction. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, I'd have to say Phlox, because first of all, Denobulans, what the heck, so that's something new. And I thought it was really, I thought it was really cute when Archer knocked on the window that, he's going to ask him to be his medical officer. He said, me? I do love John Billingsley, and I love the way he played Phlox. Is definitely one of my favorite characters.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What about you, Mike?
Well, I was gonna say Phlox also, but then just to make it something different, I'll say Hoshi. I think she had a pretty good introduction. She's like in the middle of the jungle teaching a bunch of students an alien language. So right away you get the sense, okay, she's an expert at languages, and as a student of languages myself, that really appeals to me. So.
You are a nerd. That's true. I can vouch for that, guys. He's really nerdy.
He wouldn't be here if he wasn't, right?
True. So nerdy, Bridget. You're also here.
I am.
Who did you think had the best introduction?
Honestly, the good answers were taken already. I mean, like they both gave very good answers. These two, either side of me down there, I don't know, on the stream, really great answers. I like both of them. I'm gonna add on the dog because I like the dog.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, good. Actually, yeah, good.
Who would have thought there would be a dog on a starship?
I love the idea of pets in space. I'm sorry. I love that idea. I saw a cat in space. My heart grew 3 sizes.
I think I remember liking Phlox. I remember loving Hoshi and Travis. But in this episode, I was pleasantly surprised with Trip and T'Pol's introductions. I didn't remember Tripp's introduction being quite this good. And I thought it was really good because his seemed like the most natural and not contrived. Like, Hoshi's great, but when she's going like, oh, you mean you want me because I'm the only person that can translate this? I'm like, okay, thanks for the exposition, guys. It's like there's nothing natural about that line. Whereas with Tripp, it just seemed like, okay, we get who this guy is. There's not a stretch to understand who he is or to write for him. And I thought T'Pol was great in her introduction, but a lot of that was her delivery of being so snooty. Oh, it was delicious. Also, one more thing I wanted to ask that has really been coming at me. Stephanie, you said that it's the best opening theme song of all.
I said it was
Mike
the best
said
opening
that.
theme song.
Oh, that's
But
what
I second it.
I think I know why
you said.
Mike
That's
said
right,
that.
Stephanie. You said it was the best series of all time. Boy, what are we gonna?
Why did I say that, Bridget? Why?
Okay, I have a guess.
Okay, yes.
I think it's because you watched Buffy with your wife. Because I think that the theme song kind of reminds me of Firefly's theme song more than it reminds me of a Star Trek theme song.
Huh.
I feel like it feels like that kind of Old West meets space kind of vibe. Like it feels like hard rockin', telling you songs of the past, you know? But it's a Star Trek show. So I think that's why you like it. That's my guess.
Right, now Stephanie's guess.
Why you like it?
Yeah.
It's awesome. No, because it fits.
That's a good guess.
No, because it fits. And that's something that a lot of people argue about, but it doesn't fit. It's not instrumental like everything else. But if you sit down and you listen to the lyrics and you think about what the lyrics are trying to convey, it fits the theme of the show. So that's why I love it. I've always loved the theme song, but that's why I think it's the best.
And now let's have Ryan guess, and then I'll tell you guys the real answer.
The same reason why you say your favorite Star Wars character is Jar Jar Binks.
Wait, no, do you really? wait, no,
he does,
why?
well, he does say it very often.
Yeah, obviously Jar Jar Binks is the best character. I mean, we didn't get enough Jar Jar Binks in the rest of the Star Wars. He made a slight return in episode 2 or 3, but
that hurts my heart.
No, Mike, I just wanted you
He
to
was only
talking.
in the funeral in 3. He was in 2 as an ambassador.
I wanted you to keep talking, Mike, because while you were saying that, Bridget was making the most disgusted faces.
Oh, I saw it, yeah.
It was glorious. I was like, keep disgusting her. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's why episode 1 was the best Star Wars movie of all. It really is because of Jar Jar Binks.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my real answer is, I mean, Stephanie kind of hit on it a little bit, is that every other Star Trek series, it's an instrumental. It's instrumental orchestral theme, and then you watch this show, and all of a sudden you're hit over the head with like, what? There's lyrics in a Star Trek theme song, and that kind of blew me away. And at first I was like, what the heck? What am I listening to? Then I started listening to it. And it's just an awesome song, as Ryan can attribute, because we used to cover that song. We were the band Fallingtower.
Right. I didn't think
we
the song really hit me over the head. I feel like it like tickled me in the ear, and it was like, hey, do you like this or does it annoy you? And you're like, I think I like it, but it's also kind of annoying. But nah, we don't want to sing it. But
let's all sing it together, right?
Sing it.
There's time delay. But I will say this, that everybody acts like the song is unliked and it's terrible and it's horrible. But as you may have noticed in your many years on this planet, we tend to hear the loud minority and not the silent majority. So we think that everybody hates the song, but 2 or 3 times I have done polls with thousands of people in Star Trek groups, whether they have a generally favorable feeling for the song or generally negative. And every single time it's like 2 to 1 people like it. So we think everybody hates it because all we ever hear is people saying how much they hate it. But the truth is 2/3 of people actually like it, 2/3 of Star Trek fans. And I agree with those people.
Me too. Well, I will tell you, I have sung it in Vegas at karaoke, and I've never gotten booed off the stage. So.
Yet.
Well, although Connor will defend me every time I get up to sing it, so that could be part of the reason why. Connor will sit there and say, it's the only one that has lyrics, and then I get to sing it. So.
Yeah, so far. Although we got more Star Trek series coming out soon.
True.
By the way, so we're excited about
Lower
that.
Decks.
Do you really think that it's the best series of all, Stephanie? We can't talk about it too much because we're supposed to focus on this one episode. But
right. Honestly, well, I said that sort of to be controversial, but I will say this. TOS I kind of put on its own little pedestal. So it's like TOS and then everything else underneath of it. So I'm not saying that it's better than the original series, but I think out of everything that's come after it, yes. After the original series, I do like it the best. And I've told this whenever I've been asked, it's because of that rawness and that newness and the unpolished version of humanity kind of jetting out into the stars for the first time that I appreciate more so than the others.
The one adjective I would say that describes that about this series is charming. It's got charm.
It does.
What do you think, Mike? Is this the best Star Trek series ever?
I mean, I'm a Deep Space Nine guy, so.
So that's all I have to say about
that.
That's it. You know, like
that.
What about you, Bridget? Is this the best Star Trek series ever?
No, not in my opinion. Do you see Baby Picard there? Do you see him? That's my favorite one, is Next Generation. It always has my heart. Look, it's the Locutist.
Oh, cutie. Low.
That is the low cutest. Yeah.
Cutest. Here's a fun question for us to enjoy and really chew on then. Now, I mean, since we're talking about, is it the best? Give us your top 3 best top 3 favorite Star Trek series. Starting with Michael Kenyon Rosenberg.
Well, I mean, because I was like on season 5 of Voyager, so I really haven't seen all of Voyager either. And I haven't seen all of Enterprise. So I guess I would just have to say that my favorite Star Trek series, number 1's got to be DS9. Number 2's got to be TNG. But number 3, I'm going to say Discovery.
DS9, TNG, and Discovery. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know Discovery was that high up. You, your audio went high and low for a second there. Maybe give it a little jiggle into the connection. Yeah, just for a second there. What about you, Stephanie? Number 1 is Enterprise.
Number 1 would be Enterprise.
2 and 3.
I thought you said number 1 was TOS.
Well, yeah, you're gonna ask me. I mean, that's tough. Like, I guess I'd have to say TOS and then Enterprise. And then I think it's really close between TNG and DS9. I can't really, because I'm just started rewatching DS9, and I've only gotten through the 2nd season.
You're in for a treat. Bridget, top 3 Star Trek series. There are no wrong answers, by the way.
Well, good, because get ready for mine. There's a special place in my heart for TNG because when I was a teenager, I would have drinking games where me and my friend would have cans of root beer and watch episodes of TNG. And when he says, engage or whatever, you take a sip. That's the level of memories that I have with it. Is very dear to my heart. So that one has to be number 1 for me.
Can I just interrupt you and say that I can right now hear the screeching of about 4,000 nerds saying, if you're drinking root beer, you should be watching Deep Space Nine, obviously. All right? Come on. We all know this. Anyway, sorry. Please continue, Bridget.
Haven't watched enough Deep Space Nine to know what that means. So...
Well, then you are in luck because now you have a whole fun series to watch.
It's true. I watched Picard with my friend who I used to watch that other show with when I was a teenager. And so that one also has a special memory for me. So then after that, I mean, honestly, it's a coin flip for me as far as what I've seen of other ones. So I would put Deep Space Nine in there. Sure. Why not? Fill it into the mix.
Nice. We twisted your arm.
Yeah.
Well, I saw one episode with a friend and I enjoyed it. And I remember seeing a couple episodes and I enjoyed it. But I don't know.
That's
It
awesome.
had Worf as well. That's fine.
That's why we like having Bridget on the show, because she gives us real world analysis. All of us are actual like full scale Trekkie nerds, whereas Bridget's like, hey, I dabble, okay? I'm not crazy like you guys. I'll tell you what the rest of the world feels when they watch this stuff. Good perspective. For me, it's always been neck and neck between Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. I think that Next Generation is probably my favorite because that's the one I kind of grew up on and watched first and really loved. But I feel like Deep Space Nine is the best written of the series. So they're kind of 1 and 1A there. It's tough to say who's number 3. Probably it's Enterprise, but I haven't seen it in a long time, so maybe it's not anymore. Although upon rewatching this right now, I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would, just a tiny bit more. So I do think it's probably number 3 for me, surprisingly. But I really liked the characters, and I really thought that they had a good introduction with a ton of potential. I mean, we're so excited when we heard they had this show because we're like, we get to see the formation of the Federation, as Mike said, eventually. But that was so exciting. And then these new characters are so interesting and there's a great dynamic. I just thought that there was so much potential in this show, and I always really liked it. But let's take a moment right now, Stephanie K, and talk about you for a minute, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about something called Lambda Quadrant.
Lambda Quadrant. Lambda Quadrant is a group of Star Trek geeks that came together as a nonprofit to support the LGBTQ fan community within Star Trek and kind of beyond. We're a cross section. I'm straight. We've got a trans woman. We've got gay. We were founded by Randy, who he's a gay man. So we're kind of a cross section of the LGBTQ flag. And we realized that as all-encompassing as Star Trek is supposed to be with IDIC, there is still a lot of members of the LGBTQ community who don't feel entirely comfortable, even at a convention, where you would think they would feel embraced by other fans. They don't. So we are there to provide safe spaces within Star Trek community, within Star Trek conventions. We are going to be at STLV if STLV happens in December.
As Michael says, eventually.
Eventually. And we're going to be planning events so that people can feel, that they can truly be themselves and be Star Trek fans and whoever else that they identify as. The other part of Lambda Quadrant is that we raise money for established charities within the LGBTQ community. We realize we could either be a nonprofit that raises money, or we could be a nonprofit that raises money for already established. And as of this past weekend, where we had our second virtual convention, we raised $700 for Center for Black Equity, which is a charity that supports LGBTQ people of color. So we raised $700 for them, but since we started with our first Picard viewing party back at the end of January, we have raised about $3,100 for just a variety of charities, including Chase Masterson's Pop Culture Hero Coalition, SAGE, which is the oldest nonprofit supporting LGBTQ elders, and then some local LGBTQ charities in New York.
And by the way, you guys are a ton of fun. You're all very friendly and very cool. They've been really, really good to us in the fan community, always very friendly and stuff. What I'm trying to say is, who's your favorite member of Lambda Quadrant? No,
besides me?
Don't say that.
Me! I'm my favorite member of Lambda Quadrant. Come on.
No, but they've been very, very good. You guys only started not even a year ago, though, right?
No, it hasn't even been a year. I mean, we kind of came together over last summer, and we were trying to figure out how to introduce ourselves, and we decided that Picard would be the perfect time to introduce ourselves. So we have a drag queen that works with us, Heather. Heather Wood. She's a member of our group. And we decided the best way to introduce ourselves was with a big viewing party for the premiere of Star Trek Picard. Oh. So there's a bar in New York called Industry Bar for anybody that's in the NYC area. When eventually everything opens up, we'll be back there. Industry Bar provided us an incredible space. And so Picard premiered on Thursday. That Saturday night, we had our first event. So Heather, and we had Jackie Cox as well, who is another fabulous drag queen, who was also on RuPaul's Drag Race this past season. Right. And she's a huge Trekkie. So Jackie and Heather cosplay. Heather does an incredible Janeway. Jackie does a really great Deanna Troi.
Yeah.
And they perform.
You got Bridget's
attention. That's so fun.
Oh, you should look up Jackie Cox on all the social medias. She's beautiful as Deanna. She does the blue dress.
Yeah.
She does the onesie. She's met Marina, and
I really want them to get a Guinan into the mix, though. That would be
great. So Jackie and Heather did this incredible drag show. We showed Picard. We raised money for Pop Hero Coalition. And it was a great way to introduce ourselves to the community. And then we kept up with Picard viewing parties until Corona shut us down. We did one event out in LA during Gallifrey 1, which is a Doctor Who convention in February.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And
as Michael likes to call it. Oh,
I don't know what I like to call it.
You call him Doctor Whom.
Oh, I thought that was you like to call it.
Oh, is
Grammar
it me
police
that
over
that?
there.
I can't keep track of what I say
No, it's you that
anymore.
says that, though. Stop putting words in my mouth. I have enough words coming out of my mouth.
Kind of too many, right?
I'm just going to start vomiting them up. So basically, what we're trying to say to you people out there who are watching this right now is open up your pocketbooks and start giving some money to Lambda Quadrant.
Right, to Lambda Quadrant charities, that is, right?
Yeah. Yes. Like I said, we raised in one weekend, in this past weekend, this was our second virtual convention. We did one the end of April. We did a Saturday the end of April, and then a follow-up the next Saturday, the first Saturday in May. And we had so much fun, and we figured we're Lambda Quadrant. We needed to do something for Pride. So this past weekend, we did our second one for Pride. And like I said, we raised $700. We're looking forward to participating in Virtual TrekCon coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yay.
No, in like an hour.
Party.
I know. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to that.
Is it now?
It's pretty much right now.
We're a lot like Doctor Who in that we travel through space and time. So.
It's virtually right now, actually.
Dad jokes.
Stephanie, though, also there's something that makes you uniquely qualified to do this particular podcast, which is
my podcast.
I'd say yes.
My little slice of the internet. I do. I have a podcast, and it's called the NX 7062 podcast. I do it live Monday nights. I was doing Mondays and Wednesdays during Corona, and I'm actually on hiatus right now because I'm a one-woman show, and I thought I needed to take the summer off and kind of see where I'm at. So I'll be premiering again in September, and I'm live Monday nights, 10 o'clock East. I just started doing YouTube, so I'm audio and video.
Hey. Party time.
So you can check me out. I'm at NX7062 on Twitter and Facebook, and NX7062 on YouTube. And I've named after obviously my Enterprise fandom, but I do cover other topics. But whenever I have a chance to talk about Enterprise, I usually end up working Enterprise into pretty much every episode if I can. I've done interviews with some of the Enterprise people. I've also had I've interviewed Connor, Dominic, and Eric Pierpoint, who, not to spoil anything, but he's in it in later episodes. So
you've interviewed me. That was fun.
Yeah, that's true. I did interview you, and
it was fun for me.
It was fun for me too. I told you you could come back. We could talk more about Enterprise anytime you want to come back.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you invited me on your show. I was like, but I haven't watched Enterprise in like 15 years, but I had fun.
Yeah, well, we talked about other things.
I don't remember what we talked about, but it
We
was
talked
fun.
about you were in Star Trek 2009,
Right.
so we talked about that. We talked about Trek in general.
So this is Stephanie K is her online name. Don't ask what her last name is because we're not allowed to tell you. But
it might start with a K.
Maybe.
I'll never tell.
Well, we'll put links to all of her stuff in the description box below, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, those are our good friends over at Lambda Quadrant. We really can't say enough good things about them. They do awesome work, and they're very genuine people, and we love them very much. And also check out Stephanie's podcast and pretend like I said as many scintillating things about it as I just did for Lambda Quadrant.
Because it is an awesome
right.
I'm imagining it right now.
There you go. Because it's live, so I love to have people come on and talk, like the audience talk. I don't like just to talk. I like to interact. So that was part of it, was to kind of be like a convention-y kind of experience where I'm not just the only one talking. I like to interact with my audience.
I like it a lot. It's fun. I love it. So now we get to the portion of the day where we move forward a little bit. We move. What's wrong, Michael? What happened? What happened?
Because you always try to put words in my mouth and say that I like to call things that I don't really like to call them.
Well, if you look to your right, it looks like a word's coming out of your mouth.
Like Easy Reader on Electric Company.
So, Stephanie, the reason Michael is laughing is because he dubbed this next part, which is the final part of the podcast, he called it the Terrible Twos, but he didn't think it was going to stick, but it has stuck, so now we're doing the Terrible Twos.
It's only stuck because Ryan keeps harping on it, and he's the one that named it that. So, but his favorite joke in the whole wide world, that's only funny to him because nobody else is laughing right now, is that he likes to say that I came up with the name, even though he's the one that came up with
If
the name.
we were Klingons right now, I would say, it is a good joke. And you would say, yes, and you tell it well. But, right, that's a Deep Space Nine scene with Worf and some old Klingon.
I'll get that eventually.
You'll get it in season 6 or whatever it is. Anyway, Terrible Twos. So, question number 1 is, on a scale of 1 to 10, Michael Kenyon Rosenberg, what rating would you give this first episode of Enterprise?
I would give it an 8. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it introduces everyone well, and it kind of sets up the premise of the show well, and it leaves you hanging wanting more, especially this first part of the two-parter. It's a pretty interesting cliffhanger, and it leaves you saying, hey, what's going to go on now?
I did say that, actually. Stephanie, I have no idea where you're going to go with this answer, but what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
9. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's perfect, so solid 9.
Bridget, Smiley Bridge, by the way. Everybody check out her information in the description box of the video below.
It's there.
Smiley Bridge, she does so many awesome things. She's a comedian. She's an actress. She books acting jobs from her home. It's incredible.
What? It's true. But what would I rate this episode? Just the first part, right? We're not talking about part 2. We're talking about the first part. Then I would rate that part a 7. I thought that part was very fun. I liked the first part a lot. The second part I wasn't so hot on, but the first part I loved. There you go. Not love, because that would clearly be a 10. But a 7.
You know what?
7 loved it.
I'm gonna go out of the box. And by out of the box, that would be like if the box were between 0 and 8.9, and I'm going to give it a 9. Honestly, I'm just rating it really high because I really like the characters, and I think they set up a ton of potential, although I think that the plot was what was lacking. The plot was kind of boring. I didn't really care about the Suliban. I didn't really care about... There was a point where I was kind of like, wait, what's actually happening again? I was like, honestly, I don't care. I just like the characters and the creation of the series world that they gave us, you know? it had just so much potential. And of course, we know it. They didn't really hit those things in the first couple of seasons. But I give it a 9 because I liked it a lot. I liked the characters, and I like where it could have gone. If that makes sense. But the second part of the Terrible Twos is the big one. This is really, we could really just skip the whole show and just cut to this. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg, for the purposes of this podcast, you watched the first episode. Now that the podcast is over, would you watch the second episode of Enterprise?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
As
a matter of fact, it's my so right now, because Angel, the show Angel, only went for 5 seasons, and as Ryan knows, Deep Space Nine is 7 seasons long. So right now my wife and I were watching Stargate Universe because she's a big Stargate fan, and she wanted me to see Stargate Universe, which is 2 seasons long. So right now we're finishing up Deep Space Nine, and we're also watching this show called Stargate Universe. And so it's my plan after that to watch more Stargates with her. And in turn, what I get is that we can watch Star Trek Enterprise. And so that's my plan for that.
Nice.
I don't know. She's going to go for it, but
I think she will. She's reasonable. And she likes Star Trek. Stephanie, again, no idea where you're going to go with this answer. Would you watch the second episode?
I think I might just have to give it a chance. So yeah, probably.
It's very open-minded of you. Bridget Fitzgerald.
So Bridget, we're going to have to change the question a little bit because she did watch the second episode.
I did watch the second
I agree.
episode.
That's cool.
So we're going to have to ask her if she's going to watch the third episode.
I will not. Here is why. The part that I didn't like, that I've been, what is it, this whole episode. Like, the part I didn't like was that shower scene, and I felt like it kind of like objectified one of the officers on the deck, which really upset me.
Wait till
as
season
a woman.
2 pops up.
Well, it just made me really upset because I was like, it's really taking away her power as a person by changing her into a sexual object by zooming in on erogenous zones in a shower scene, which wasn't necessary.
You mean the decon scene?
Yeah. And I feel like they wouldn't have done an upskirt shot of Picard, so they shouldn't do that with someone that we're supposed to respect as a position of authority.
See, we should have kept it. We should have kept it as would you watch the second episode, because she would have not known that. She would have like, hell yeah, and then she'd watch the second and be like, wait a second.
I mean, because here's the thing, Stephanie K likes it, and I think Stephanie K is a cool person. So I'm like, am I reading too much into this? Because it's just, really bothered me.
Well, let me point out that the Trip, if you pay attention, Trip gets objectified in that as well.
So does Reed. I mean, they just pretty much really tried to amp up the sexual. So does Hoshi later on. So does Archer. All of them except for Phlox.
Yeah,
and he's the only one that I wanted to see objectified.
But he's talking about polygamy.
Why can't we get any? No.
He's going
so it's a very equal opportunity objectifying. I mean, it's just the thing I think where I'm okay with it, I think, is because it's like an interesting piece of Star Trek history where the transporter has that bioscan. So when you get transported up to the ship, it takes care of anything you might have picked up on the surface. But because they're shuttle podding back and forth, they have to do this decon thing because they're not using transporter technology to kind of make sure that they don't contaminate the ship. So that was how they kept the ship from getting.
I get that that's what they wrote to justify this scene, but I just don't think it's necessary.
That's fair. But
I mean, we're all talking about a made-up future. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I get it, and I that is an interesting point, but I just think that it was handled.
But if you continue to watch it, trust me, the men get objectified more. There's a couple episodes where Trip spends most of the time running around in his underwear, so it's not just the women.
Okay, if
right.
I'm. You seem like a smart person, so I trust that opinion.
But the truth is, as Bridget basically said, it was that they wanted to up the sex appeal for men and for women,
Right.
and that's the in-story, in-world reason how they explained, really they just wanted to show people in their underwear, and they're like,
Right.
how do we
They probably realized that, okay, when we put 7 of 9 on Voyager, people started watching it again. And then, okay, we need to put some scantily clad women on, cat suits and scantily clad women on Enterprise too, to kind of really hit that demographic.
It's
And
pretty shameless.
They just kind of went for it. Yeah. So.
Anyway.
Yeah, but like I said, at least it's equal opportunity. It's not
Right.
just the women. The men end up in their underwear a lot. So
Thank goodness.
Okay. If the men are in their underwear, then maybe I'll try it. I don't know.
after we're all done, I'll give you the list of episodes with the men in their underwear.
I've got a comprehensive list too. So
All right.
anyway, we do have to run. I do want to give a shout out, speaking of, to Paul for being a vegetarian, and for the writers who write that vegetarian stuff, because I'm a vegetarian too. I'm a total hippie about that stuff. And I think it's awesome that they kind of made it seem like, oh, you guys still eat carnivore animal flesh stuff.
Animal flesh.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm secretly like, yeah, get them, guys, get them. Anyway, but we do have to run, and I do want to thank you, Stephanie K. I do want to thank you, Bridget F. For
okay, Fitzgerald. It's Fitzgerald.
Thank you,
Michael KR.
No, I was going to say, any final words from you, Michael KR?
Oh, just go ahead and down below, go ahead and leave us a thumbs up. Go ahead and give us a comment. Tell us what you liked about this show or what you didn't like about it. If you hated the theme song, let us know. If you think that I'm ugly, just don't say anything about it.
If you have lyrics to any other theme song, please put them below. If you've written lyrics for Next Generation, I want to hear them. Please put them below.
The one I want to know the most is in the comments below. Actually, thanks for reminding me, Michael Kenyon Rosenberg. I want to know what everybody's top 3 favorite Star Trek series are, because there are 8 of them now. I want to know what's your top 3 favorite series. Tell us in the comments below. Don't say if you think Mike's ugly. That's rude. Everybody knows he's hot, dude. He's charming and attractive and sweet. Anyway, and taken.
Ooh.
Thanks very much for joining us, everybody, on Falling Towers. Watch the first. By the way, Michael's remembering it just as I am. If you want us to watch the first episode of a series, just type WTF and the series in the comments below. So say WTF Robotech or WTF He-Man in the comments below. That means watch the first He-Man.
Or as my wife would write, WTF Stargate Universe.
Yep. Great. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time on Falling Towers. Watch the first podcast.